Welcome to Beyond Turning Points. My name's Ash. Very special guest for you today. My guest today is Manal Waugh, and Manal isn't someone who just speaks about living a dream life. She walks it. Her work explores what it means to reconnect with what she calls the dreamer, that part of you that existed before the world taught you how to think, behave, and translate yourself to others. Through her own life, she's followed the dream state into many extremes, moments of deep beauty and moments that feel like losing herself entirely. And through it all, she's seen that every experience, no matter how light or dark, has been guiding her towards a way of being fully awake within the living dream of life, rather than unconsciously moving through it. And I thought we'd start today's episode with me reading you a quote from her book. So her book's called Lucid Dreams, Waking Up to What You Truly Are. And this is from chapter 19. If you are conscious enough to hear two alternative voices within, the mind and the space between, listen to the space between. That is the heart. The heart will always see more than the mind. If you are ever going to bet your life on one voice, put your money on the heart, always. Welcome, Manny.
Thank you, Ash. That's a
Uh,
nice introduction.
yeah, well, all these things that you are and evolving. And so I guess my first question for you is where did you grow up?
I grew up in Sydney, but in Punchbowl. So it felt like a little fishbowl. I come from a Lebanese background, born in Australia, but it was very much the Lebanese community. So there was nothing too different around me in terms of the demographic and the culture and, Lebanese Catholic family, so there was a lot of that around me as well, the neighbors and then the school as well. So it was this very tight, um, and I use that word on purpose, it felt very tight in terms of everything was the same, and for someone who didn't feel like that was quite it for me, there was always this resistance to being in this kind of very homogenized space where if you thought differently, even just micro, if you just liked different music, you stood out. If you liked different colors, you stood out because everything was very the same. So that was, yeah, where I grew up.
And so what about when you got to adulthood and there was the sense of restriction? What did young Manny? I call you Manny, right? We're
Okay.
friends, so for the listener, Manny and I know each other very well. So it's a bit of a challenge for me to call you Manal, but I'll try
No,
and
you
stay
call me
connected to
Melanie.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, what was that like? What happened for you when you became a young adult, and how did she respond to the constriction?
Just wanted to get out any way I could, really. That was the feeling from when I was a little girl. I was just constantly trying to get out, just trying to find any corner, space, crevice, an open window, an open door, back door, passageway. I just wanted to get out of that feeling that um, everything's the same. There's no room for movement. There's no room for growth. There's no room for self expression without entire village kind of and it's not necessarily that that was the actual experience, but that was the felt experience, and that was definitely the lived experience, is that everything is watching you, everything is telling you what to do all the time, and that thing that's watching you and instructing you is the same no matter where you go. Whether you're in the house, whether you're at your friend's house, you're at school, you're at church, everything is has the same voice. The policing system was the same, and it was for someone like me who tried really hard as a girl and didn't stop trying even through high school. I just kept trying to change the shape or the voice of it, and it was just always hit with this, "You're not allowed to do that here. This isn't the community for that. You're not if you do something like that, it will be wrong and it will be incorrect and you will be reprimanded, or at least like, a lot of people telling on you if you did anything that wasn't allowed." And so it wasn't, maybe it sounds a bit like a cult, it wasn't that, but because everyone shared, it was such a tight community, the Lebanese Catholic community, everyone shared the same beliefs. It was very hard to play with anything extra. So the minute I could, I got out. I went to uni, I made friends that weren't Lebanese Catholics, and I tried to explore the possibility of thinking differently and, being in different ecosystems, the minute that I could, just to explore what that feeling was inside me, where I know there's more than this. I know that there's other beliefs and other ideas and other ways of expressing yourself, other than this community can allow. And I'm very grateful for that community because it was safe. There was a lot of safety. I grew up in Punch Bowl and there were cars being blown up in my street. There was never any terror. There was never any fear because it was always like, you're one of us, so we're not going to touch you. But it was still the idea of, I don't want to feel safe anymore. I just want to feel real.
Mm. And so you're at uni, you wanna feel real. What does that younger version of you do?
So I went to uni, mainly to make friends. I studied education and psychology, and I guess I ditched a lot of classes because I think the experience of uni was just, it was something I always wanted to do as a young girl, and it wasn't something that was, I guess, strongly encouraged in the community. It wasn't like you had to go to university. So that was the appeal to me. And then it also felt like it was out enough that I could explore some other possibilities. It was far enough away and there was going to be a different ecosystem and different demographics. So it was the first time I really explored with having friends that weren't Lebanese, that weren't Catholic, that had different ideas. And so, yeah, there was a lot of play during uni,
Mhm.
going out and exploring, music, and places all around Sydney that I didn't have a ticket to get to while I was still in the fishbowl. So this was my first sort of ticket to all of these cool new places. And some of them I didn't like, but it was still cool to see. It was like, okay, this is what you guys do here. This is what you guys do here. And um, yeah, I never got into the drug scene, but it was still fun to explore how people played in the world that was different to me. And because I had enough, you know, I've always had enough knowing of myself of what I want to play with or I'd like to touch and try. So I never really got into the drug scene, but it was about going out, dancing, experiencing live events, lots of different people coming together. And I've always been one of those people that, I didn't need to be drunk or sort of, I didn't need to switch anything off inside me to dance or have fun or play in that way. So it was still just good to get a ticket to the playground. Even
Mhm.
though I noticed that a lot of people, once they were there, had to kind of switch certain things off for them to really let loose and be free. I feel like that was the part I didn't quite get because I didn't go through that in my youth. So that was interesting to me, what people had to do to switch off or switch on, however you hear that.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then where did life lead you?
Okay, so I did a Bachelor of Teaching, Bachelor of Psychology, but I leaned closer into teaching after the first few years of psychology. Um, yeah, I made the decision that I really wanted to be in the classroom. And so after and this is the pattern of my life is I'll do something, I'm not really sure why. So I wanted to do teaching, and I was one of those students in year 12 where everybody was freaking out. They didn't know what they wanted to do. And I was like, what are you talking about? I could do anything. And I had this list, and because I could be any of these things, I didn't know which one I wanted to try. So I just went with teaching because one of my teachers said, if you do teaching, you can do lots of those other things too. You can write, you can do journalism, blah, blah, blah. So I went into teaching, and by the end of the teaching course, I had changed my mind. I'm like, I don't think I want to teach. So then I went overseas and I came back and worked in an office and was having lots of fun doing that as well. So it was exploring all of these other possibilities. and I was being shifted so far away from teaching that, and that's the pattern that happens with me is, I'll get bored with something as soon as I'm ready to actually do it. And then a friend suggested that I go and just start teaching. There's a temp position. And so I went for the interview not even wanting it, but I got the interview within a few minutes. The person that was interviewing me had thought I knew that I got the job. And I was like, "Oh, no, I didn't think I wanted to teach." And so I went into teaching in that way of just I fell in there. And I loved it. I really loved it. I loved so much about it. I fell into a really great community of teachers, that we were all young, fun, in that same sort of phase of life. And I was English teaching, and it was a great staff room that I was in. It was very nurturing. And I learnt so many skills in that, I'd say that first 10 years. I stayed in that same school for 10 years. I met my husband there. It was a great little next family to sort of fall into. And much like the punch bowl experience, it was fish bowly. It was tight. Everything felt the same. But it was kind of the next safe house, I guess, for me to grow. Um, I learnt a lot of new voices, a lot of new mannerisms, a lot of new identity pieces being strung together just through the mentors that were around me and the job description. And I mean, you've been a teacher, so you understand that there is a lot of ego. There's a
Mm,
lot of identity, there's a lot of personality that comes through in that role, particularly for people who genuinely went into it because they wanted to help and they wanted to, save, um, children who were not heard and not seen and not listened to. So you start off like that, but it's so interesting for me to track my growth and movement through my teaching years, and how it ended as it was no more about that child that I had, um, gone in thinking that I was going to be this little child whisperer and I was going to be able to pick up who needed that guidance and whose life was going to be changed by the teacher that could hear them and see them. And then the system, the way that it's built and designed, ends up making it all about the teacher. And so you can't really help, I feel like, in that unconscious state, you can't really help but fall into that cycle in the teaching sphere, which is, I feel like, once you enter teaching as that young, naive, innocent freshie who's so excited to get their hands on and change the world, and you see all of the older teachers that are like, "Oh god, here we go, another." And then by 10 years later, I was one of them. I was someone who was like, "Oh, that's not what we're doing here."
oh, yeah, I remember one particular school that I started at. I'd probably been teaching almost, let's say, 5, 6, 7 years. And I started at a school, and there was a teacher who was close to retirement. And she said, "Oh, you've got so and so." And she said, "Oh, gosh, he's a treasure." And I was like, "Oh," and she's like, "I'd love to bury him." And I was just like, well, I just remember thinking, "Oh my God, what? 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 Oh, please, I hope I never get to that point of, speaking about children that way." But that system, as a teacher, it's so demanding. It's so demanding on your physical, well, for me, on my physical resources as well as my mental and emotional resources. And for me, I really struggled with kids slipping through the system, like kids that couldn't read or write, and me wanting to help them. But then I had 27 other kids in the room. And so, well, how do I even do that? And so for me, it led to working in behavior and learning difficulties and special needs. And that that was rewarding to a point because the classes were smaller, or I was working with small groups. So instead of 28, 30 kids at once, it was smaller. But it still had that impact of how demanding emotionally and energetically it is to be in a room with children day in, day out, 200 days a year. And then on top of that, the demands outside of teaching, the paperwork. It was because when I came to the end of my career, I was working 4 days a week, but then the paperwork was still requiring another 2 days. And we're like, well, I'm working 6 days a week here. It's not what I want. And there's other parts of my life like parenting and relationship and music and surfing and things that I want to explore. So I just got to the point where I decided, okay, it's time for this to finish. It wasn't an easy transition out of teaching. What about you? How did you find that?
You said it. I mean, you slowly realize that, oh, the thing you thought you were doing, not only are you not doing it, but you can't. Even if you try to do it, you're an outlier. So it's not built for that. It's not built for the children. It's not built for this for the actual learner. It's built that the learner has to adapt to the teacher. That became very clear to me. And so when I when I knew that that was the system, and because I was still very in that unconscious space, egoically, I was like, okay, cool, well, I can do that. And I built classrooms and models around, okay, how can I get all of these students to hear me? And that was fun and successful for a while. And then I just feel like I hit that point where it became boring. I realized I could do the job to the degree that I mean, I would say department, but the system wanted me to, which is, can you get these kids to get a certain score? Can you get them to understand certain concepts, regardless of how they listen and regardless of what they want to do? And I could do that. So I was very good at doing what the system wanted me to do. And then I became bored and disheartened, and there was no more passion. It was just like, um, automated. And then I started to see where I really cared, because I worked a lot more in welfare and the welfare of the female students and developing programs there. And I could see how these girls were completely abandoned by this system, and how that this early entry into thinking and feeling and responding and how valued you are in society, just in that microcosm, was so responsible for how these young women were going to leave that phase of their life and deal with the same kind of messaging, from the next phase of their world. And that was the next, I guess, point where I couldn't look away. And certain things happened with particular students, and the school that I was working with did not, I don't believe, treat that with the level of care and consideration that I expect a system that cares to do that. And it's not that those individuals didn't care about the students, they did. I just could see through that the level of care didn't compete with what they had to do, what they had to break in the system to be there and show up for these students, they weren't willing to do. Even when I offered specific programs, I will do it, I'll do this, the care wasn't there enough. They cared so much about all of these other things, because essentially teaching is it's just so egoic that it comes down to what you can put on your CV, how you can keep building yourself up. And doing things like that, pausing that to really look at the system and crack, is going to take away from that. So I could see straight through. And that was the main reason why I left teaching. I wrote a beautiful letter saying there's no way I can contribute to this. And they tried to keep me, and I couldn't. But I knew it wasn't that school. I knew
Mm,
it was every school. And that's the thing, is people think it's a particular school. It's every school, no matter how caring the actual individuals are. The system is not built to support that kind of level of care when it comes to the actual individual students, or even just the whole mental state or emotional state of a student body. That no matter how many programs they introduce in, it's the system itself is not built enough to truly care about building that and shaping that. So I could see how tokenistic everything was, and that this was essentially all about me and my resume. And I was like, well, if it is, I'll just go and do something else.
This episode of Beyond Turning Points is proudly sponsored by the Pure Impact Academy. Pure Impact Academy is for heart-led professionals and leaders who know their work matters. You care deeply, you show up, and yet visibility can feel challenging, effortful, or draining. So inside the academy, the transformation is from effortful leadership where things feel forced or difficult to natural leadership. So rather than posting and hoping, what we're doing is we're communicating with clarity and traction and connecting with the people you want to help with your work. So what will happen in Pure Impact Academy if you join is you learn how to articulate your work in ways that people feel seen and heard and feel like you're the person to help them. And you also learn to work with your inner critic so visibility no longer feels like it's a challenge for you. What does this mean? Well, this means you build momentum. Momentum is one of the most powerful things that you can access. So in Pure Impact Academy, you also get the Messaging Matters course. There's an AI school that I run. I teach AI strategies. There's a visibility lab where it's a hands-on workshop each fortnight where you can learn about your own visibility blocks and how to navigate criticism, conflict, being seen, self-judgment, perfectionism, procrastination, all those things that we know and love about ourselves. And the goal is you have inner clarity, outer visibility, and heart-led momentum. That way your work is going out in the world and helping the people that you want to help. Instead of guessing and trying to attract people in a way that's uncertain, you have much more certainty around your messaging. If that sounds like something you'd be interested, the link is in the show notes. Feel free. You can also message me on socials. You can DM me and I'll be very happy to answer any of your questions. Look forward to hearing from you. It's something I encounter with people that have some sort of turning point where they life's going one way. It's like, okay, this isn't working for me. It's not aligned to my values. Generally, to find out it's not aligned with the values, move away from the values and living in a way that's not in alignment, and then that creates an energetic burnout kind of feel. Did you find that for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you're saying this now, I'm getting goosebumps because that's exactly what happened. I didn't even really consider that as a huge turning point, when this specific incident happened. But it was a moment I had to pull my car over and recalibrate my body of, what am I going to do? And it was a slow talking to of myself of how much can you show up in this place when when you can see what it's doing, what it's not doing. Um, And so it was, I guess, a few years of me turning that I did turn to the point where it was like, it, I feel like I thought I was standing up for my values by not staying. But what I did was turn away from my values and go and do something else entirely that almost put a pin in that. So I've only just clocked this right now. Thanks, Ash. But I put a pin in that reaction of how are we doing this? How are we doing this to our children? How are we doing this to each other? How can we look at ourselves in the mirror and say that, yeah, we're showing up and we're caring, we're doing our job when we have clearly just tried to wipe this out of our entire, story. We're just trying to pretend it didn't happen. Um, and I've just realized now that I was doing that for the next, you know, 10 years. I just went into a different field, I went into fashion, I started my own bridal label. It's not because I didn't care, but it's because I truly believed, oh, well, if no one's going to listen to me, no one's going to try and change that or stop that from ever happening again, then I'll just do something else.
Hmm. And you were very successful, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, what's successful mean? It means, yeah, the business was great. It went internationally, featured in Vogue. I was loving what I was doing, and then the same feeling came in or crept in. What are you doing?
Yeah. And Where does that voice come from? The "What are you doing" voice? Where do you feel like that's coming from?
Well, I feel like that's the me, the dreamer, the one that had this whole life mapped out. And there were these huge pivotal moments that reminded me what I truly care about and what I truly want to create around, because I can see the misalignment in a certain space in life. And I this is so live, so stay with me.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Coming
great.
through now. But it's like, instead of, "Oh, no one's gonna fix it with me, or no one can see this like me, so I'm just gonna leave it," and blame the world almost. Just like this, yeah, no one cares like me, so whatever. I'm just gonna sort of just be a little tantrumer and just be like, I'm gonna do something else then, instead of remembering that I was the one that was supposed to do something else about
Mhm,
that. Whether I have an army behind me or not, I have enough gusto and just like, this is not okay to say it, put a pin in it. I guess we're not gonna do anything about that.
mm. And for you, so you've got a global bridal brand, and you're doing it very differently, very creatively.
Bowie Ray, yeah.
Yeah. Um, just tell us a bit about that. What was the philosophy behind Bowie Ray?
Well, while I was teaching, I got married, and when I came to get married, which was something I thought I'd never do, I realized that there's no choice for a woman that doesn't wanna be a bride. Like, if you're getting married, you gotta wear a wedding dress, and they look ugly, and I care about fashion, so I was like, "Oh, I could do a better job than this?" And it's, again, something very classic I do. I have no experience in fashion design or business, but I was like, "I could do better than this." So I started this label. At first, it was with a friend, and then a few years later, before it launched, I bought it off her, and I just wanted to design wedding dresses for women who didn't wanna wear wedding dresses. That was kind of the idea. It's like, I know there's more rebels than me. I know there's more people that think these dresses are ugly, and they you kind of feel like you're dressing down. Something happens when you put them on. And even with my wedding, I had my sister design my dress, and I didn't like it. She didn't design it. I co-designed, but I was so discombobulated with, how do you design a wedding dress that looks good without constantly going straight to designing a wedding dress? So I ended up wearing a wedding dress. So all of that helped me create this idea, this brand, which was, well, if I was to do it again, I wouldn't wear a wedding dress. What would I wear? Here we go. And just explore the possibilities of what else you could wear to express yourself outside of the limiting definitions that currently exist. It's like, there are templates, and templates can be rewritten and rejigged, but these are your templates. And, well, what if you're someone like me? It's like, I don't wanna wear something from the template. Like, what do we do? And, well, we have to create something new. And even if you use the template as a base and just add, but you're adding more than just, changing the font or changing the color. We want something wildly different that really feels like us. So the brand really resonated with a lot of women. That shocked me. I think I never really, when I first launched it, I never really believed it would resonate. I just almost wanted to do it, I feel like, in retrospect, as a big FU to the department, to teaching, to that feeling that, well, you got to stay here with that. So I just went for something completely different. And so I was very shocked when it was received so well by women, all over the world as well, and other designers. And it felt like, okay, maybe I do know what I'm doing. I mean, I'm not a designer, but I love fashion. So you don't need to be a designer, and you can outsource all of that. So things became very easy to see that you didn't need to follow the rules. You could just jump into a completely different ecosystem or a fish pond and play there. You might not look like everyone else, but that's actually probably a bonus because you're gonna stand out, so what are you gonna do here? And that kind of set me into that tone of trust yourself, trust where you land, trust what you wanna do, even though you don't have anything to back you up, in terms of credentials, because there's probably a reason that you're just jumping from one totally different pond to another one.
Mm. Yeah, I hear the kind of like, well, here's a template in life. So, for example, upbringing, it was in a template, and then there was a shift into a different way of being in your own experience. And then that became the template. And then it was like, okay, well, now I'm going to jump out of this. But then that kind of felt a bit templatey after a while.
I feel like everything will end up being templated because that's the kind of world we built. I feel like when you become a grown up, I feel like childhood is almost like, I don't feel like, I know this is what happened. Childhood was the total indoctrination of being, you were taught to be a grown up. And a grown up is, here are the templates. They are the tried and tested templates. Do not, under any circumstances, not use one of them. And then, depending on how closed circuit you were, like for me in my very tight community, it was these three templates. Don't even touch the other ones. And so I was like, well, let me just see some other templates. But the more I explored different ecosystems, the more I realized, well, it's all a templated way of thinking and behaving and believing, and all of the beliefs that we have were hand me downs. It's so clear to me that what I'm trying to find in my awakening process is, well, where's the blank canvas? I want to get to the bottom of these stories of humanity where we can find out, like, what did I think and what did I feel and what did I believe before I was taught what the good ones were, before the templates. And so, I mean, I feel like that's a dangerous or a very courageous task, but I'm on it because I know that's where I kind of always go. Whenever I cross into a different ecosystem, I go straight to, all right, give me all the templates. And then I know, okay, they're all so limiting. Let me get to the bottom of this. So I did that with teaching. I did that with having my own business and design. It's like, oh, this is all about me in the end. This is all about making money or being in Vogue or, a lot of these superficial ideas. I've certainly helped a lot of other women. I'm not going to just, what's that word? Discard what I've done. There was a lot of great moments and deep connections and a lot of learnings. But at the end of the day, there's that dreamer in me. It's like, this isn't what you're supposed to do. You were supposed to do that thing, that thing, and I know that thing. Even in this conversation, it's like getting so crisp.
Mm.
Um, this redefining the woman, redefining her place in the world.
And that's the dreamer.
Yeah, that's I've always hated, like hated the rules that the girls had. And it's so clearly beautiful, growing up in a Lebanese Catholic community, the are very, very thick. There's no wiggle room. And so it's obviously perfect that someone like me was come from that ecosystem, because I was resisting all of it constantly. So by the time I get out and it feels like, oof, thank God I'm out of there. Oh, here's another template of the exact same rules in different words. Oh, okay, I got out of there. Let me go into business. Here's the exact template. So it's the same rules that exist for, I'm going to say, girls, because it feels like it's for girls. It doesn't feel like it ever evolves to a woman. It changes its shape and it changes its words, but it's the same rules, which is, you're not allowed. You're not allowed to feel like that. It's too loud. It's too crazy. You're too much. You're too this. You're too this. It's everything is about pushing everything back in. That's definitely the sensation. And I do feel like the more I explore spaces in the world and how I fit into them, um, that those templates exist every time. So I'm not gonna get away with my job of breaking the templates. That's gonna be my job. Whereas I think I keep trying to find a place where it doesn't exist. So, oh, there they are, and the longer you stay, you think, "Oh, this place, this is nice. This feels good." And then you eventually is the amount of time that you stay there, you bump into that template. You're like, "There it fucking is." Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I do feel like that's that's coming up as very true, is that, for women like me who can feel it and hear it and see it so clear, it's not going away until we change the template ourselves.
So templates are unavoidable, or that's part of your dreaming is to live without the templates?
Not live without them. I think that they're very necessary. My experience is that everybody wants to feel free. And then when you start to feel free, you realize it's the terrifying feeling. That's what you've spent your whole life protecting yourself from feeling. So all of the templates that exist are actually in place so that you don't feel free, because freedom is terrifying unless you feel it to the point, unless you feel the templates to the point where they do feel like prison, or like I write in the book, the cardboard box. Um, and you want to break free from it, like, because it doesn't feel like a protector anymore. It feels like a prison guard. That's the only time that you and your own authorship or your sovereignty will actually start to see a template, not as a guide and not as a friend, but as the enemy. And then once you do what I did, which is try to break every template, you realize, oh no, some need to stay. Because they are friends as well. It's just your discernment to pick which ones are no longer helping me and which ones are. So it's not to be template free, but it's to realize that you get to decide and you get to design which ones stay and which ones go and which ones blend together. Just like you're creating something on Canva or on some kind of design thing, to start with a blank canvas is terrifying, because we're all grown up now, and grown ups don't want to create from a blank canvas because the possibilities are endless and the audience is watching, and a blank canvas means, you know, every single decision is going to come with all of the audio feedback of the mind, and so a template almost helps you start to create. But a lot of the times what I do, and this is with all the design stuff, I'll start with a template, and then by the time I'm finished, it's pretty much been a blank canvas because I've deleted everything that the template started. And I'm sure you might feel the same as a musician, like by the time the song finishes to the time that you start to create it, it's completely different, but you just needed something to help you start.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Something I'm conscious of too is it, the songs, they start with a feeling. It's like, oh, okay, this feels a certain way. And then in the application of it, it can become more like me, or goes into a structure that's listenable for other people as well. And that for me, the songs, they're always evolving. I've never actually finished a song, if that makes sense, even
Yeah,
if they're
perfect.
recorded, right? They're played differently almost every time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, what is happening in your life at the moment that is the dreaming aspect and letting go of the template and stepping into the dreamer?
A lot. So every day is so different because I have committed to becoming the dreamer again. And so this idea of lucid living, it doesn't mean that you're in control. It's totally understanding that you're not. There is a part of you that's in control. And all of this policing and trying to make sure that, you don't make mistakes, or you don't repeat past mistakes, or don't go into danger. All of this feels like you're actually mitigating it. But if you pay attention to life, how many times have you been so meticulous that you don't make a mistake, and then you do? Especially do the one thing that you were just spending so much energy making sure you don't do. To me, I can hear myself laughing at me when that happens. It's like, stop trying to act like you're controlling this part of the game. This isn't yours. The things are happening. You're going to make a mistake, or you're going to upset someone, or you're going to be, an asshole one day. Like, all of these things are happening no matter how much you try to police yourself to not be that. So it's trying to, for me right now, is letting go of that hypervigilance and letting go of that part of me that feels like it's driving, because there is a part of me driving, but it's just understanding which part of life am I driving. And I do believe that I'm just driving my conversation between my parts. So getting in touch more with the part of me that's dreamt this whole life has been crucial, because she is helping me understand how I keep derailing or going off the road. It's not in my choices or my decisions. It's all in my reaction. It's all in my relationship to what is happening in my life. So that's the only thing really that you can drive. And I know conceptually, this has been taught to me for so long, is that, you can't change the circumstances. You can just change your reaction to it. But to actually be in the practicing of that and realizing that this isn't about, and particularly now when everything is about manifest your own reality, and you can change the circumstances by changing your thoughts and all of this. It's true, you can, but I feel that's more of like a magic trick, because when you change a certain aspect of your reality, it lands for a moment, but you still have to deal with everything else, which is what? It's your reaction to not getting what you want, feeling like things are unfair, feeling like you're stuck somewhere you're not supposed to be, feeling like you're supposed to be something different, you're supposed to be something better. These are the parts that I'm more focused right now on driving, is my audio commentary on life and what it's doing with me. And so I've been trying to shift it very rapidly to every single thing that is happening to me is 100% for my betterment, and it's a friend. It's helping me out. And there's been some wild, wild things happening to me, which is a great chance to practice this. And it is absolutely incredible how my life is changing, because my perspective of my life is changing, from everything to getting a parking ticket to getting another fine, like the millionth fine.
Well, you do reject the templates, right? So it's like, however, we are in a 3D reality.
Exactly. Well, no, it's real. It's not me saying, and I think that that's a beautiful spiritual bypass to say, well, this isn't real anyway, this is a temple. Blah, blah, blah. It is real. So there's multiple reactions. Like, feel the feeling. This is happening to you. You have this feeling coming through. But what grown-ups tend to do that children don't is there has to be a whole story about the feeling. Where did it come from? What's it linked to? La, 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 and all the characters. And you're pretty much writing an entire story now that has to play out. It has to play out to its entirety, because you're not allowing yourself to just have a feeling in and of itself and then move on. You're not allowing yourself to have a bad moment and then it potentially resolve a moment later. You're hanging on to everything as though everything is so important. So it really is all of these little microscopic opportunities to reframe my relationship with what's actually happening. And everything's happening for me. Oh, there's a fine. I'm not pretending I'm happy about it. I'm deeply embarrassed that I got another fine, and my husband's looking at me, and if he divorces me over the fine, I have no questions. I totally, is like, I have no explanation. I deserve the fine. I deserve the consequences of the fine. I don't understand what's even happening. The fine is talking to me. I'm just I've totally exhausted my ability to keep trying to understand things. So now I'm just in the total amusement of my life and where it's taking me and where I'm going because I'm instead of grabbing tighter around the steering wheel when things like that happen, I'm loosening it so much more and it's still driving it. I'm like, "Oh, great. I don't have to drive this thing because I don't know what I'm doing actually." And that feels great.
Yeah. So the freedom lover in you is that okay. But then there's 3D, for want of a better word, let's not even use the word consequences. Let's use experiences,
Yeah, I like that.
right? Because
Okay.
then that frees you up to be the person that is choosing the experience of the fine, right? Because the fine in itself's not good or bad. It's how you take the fine.
Yeah. It was just full accountability. It was
Mm,
just the first time where there wasn't even a s there was no story anymore. It was I've done this so many times that the fact I did it again was so ridiculous that I'm like, "Who am I that I could even do this?" I have no idea. I'm nothing I thought I am if I can keep doing this. This is a complete puncture to the kind of ego I feel like I've been developing all my life. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what this is. So it's even beyond humbling now. It's just like, it's not that I don't care. It's that I'm so aware something else is happening.
mm,
That's just what it feels like. There's another potential way to see my life and hear my life. I'm not exactly there yet, but I'm certainly letting go of the way that I used to hear and experience my life. It felt a lot more templated, and this is inviting me to just let go of that before I can really access a new way of experiencing reality. Um, and these are, I feel like, little ways where I'm playing with a new possible experience for something that has always triggered a very tight reaction, you know? Some A happens, you're gonna get B. It's not that formula's not so tight right now. You know, A happens and I'm like, "Oh, I wonder which one I'm gonna use." It's like, "What? What is that?" I thought that
mm,
I just was automated. So it's a lot more freedom, but I'm also aware that I'm not necessarily also actively and consciously choosing my reaction. It's I'm just observing what's happening, and it's what is happening is entirely different to anything that has ever happened.
mm, mm. Yeah, and that's something I get from your book, right? Like, wonderful book. I'll put it in the show notes for people to be able to purchase the book. Really, really great book, really insightful. That we're creating the experience of life, but we're also the ones who choose how we respond to life and how we direct the next experience. So, for example, you get the fine, the word itself, Fine, fine. So I'm fine that I got a fine. Like, what meaning are you going to attach to fine?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
So, so tell me about your book. How did it come into being? And what would what I know? Well, for me personally, your book reconnected me with being the creator of my life and being the one who sees things differently and can experience them differently, and as I just mentioned about the directing. So how did the book come into being?
Okay. I'll keep it concise. This is a huge story, but essentially I was just getting I've always written, but at this particular point in my life, I was getting a lot more, would call them channeled, pieces of information. So I had met a woman who taught me how to scribe, which is the art form of opening yourself up as a channel, trying to connect with something or someone that isn't here in the 3D, and they sort of take control of your hand and you can scribe, and they bring forth these messages. I played with that for a little while, and then I kind of started to stop that. However, all of these new insights and perspectives and downloads would just come in through to me. So I would just write them all down, not paying too much attention to them. They were like little interesting bite-sized pieces, like, oh, that's nice. Let me write that down. And then one day I just had this itch, like, let me sit down and just try and type this all up in front of me. Maybe it's a story or it's making sense. So that was what got me to sit down behind my computer. But that's not what happened. I started writing lucid dreams, waking up to what you truly are, and then within a few hours, I had written half of what looked like a book. And I thought, wow. And it wasn't something where, because usually if I'm channeling, I can't really hear the word. Sometimes I do before it comes out, but it certainly feels like something else is talking and I'm going to read it live as it comes out. This was definitely coming through me. I was thinking of the words and I was writing them, but there was no stopping. It was just coming straight, thinking out. I had no idea what I was going to be doing. And then when I finished, I thought, I wonder if this is a book. And I just had this idea, let's just send it to some publishers and see. So I did. And I forgot all about it. And then maybe a month or so later, a publisher wrote back saying, yeah, we like it. Send us the rest of the book. And that was the moment that my mind entered. It was like, what book? I don't have the rest of the book. I didn't even write the book. And then, so that took a few months for me to do some work, some inner stuff to remove all the fear, all the audience, all the mind stuff, to sit and write it. And then I was working with a mentor at that time, and I remember the moment that we had broke through what was blocking me, the fear. And the next day I sat down to write it, and it was finished in 2 hours because it was just ready. It was just sent it off, and then and I knew that it was going to be published. And then a few months later, they wrote back saying, "Yep, we want to publish it." So it was one of the easiest ways to write a book. And I thought, wow, that was so easy. And from that moment on, because that was almost 5 years ago, from that moment on, I started writing the book. I had to literally live the book. So for those 5 years, and the publishers would be sending me, copies to edit. And every time I read it, I would go, oh my God, I get it. And every time I read it, it would be different. Oh, I get it. Oh, I get it. Because I was actually living through what I had written. So the writing of the book was almost like a time travel, like a future me wrote the book and it was like, hee, you're about to
Mhm.
this is your ride. So I feel like I've been writing the book with my actual life now and embodying every word to every layer that the word could possibly be. That's how deeply I've been living this book. Which is why by the time it's published, I'm like, yeah, it's a good book. There's no question in my mind. It's got a lot of layers, and it's that idea of releasing it to the wild, like you were saying earlier today, when you release the the injured possum that you've rescued into the wild, every artist is like, I want to make sure that everybody hears what I hear, and I want to make sure it translates to what it is for me. And there was such a beautiful letting go of that with this book, because there was no way I could have that kind of contingency with it. It's so layered that, and I had a lot of dreams about the book too, where it was said like, this is written in so many different voices that there's no way I can control how someone hears this. So I have relinquished all control, and I know what it sounds like for me and the depth that it gets to. But it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to hear that when they read it too. So it's really also refining my understanding of art, because as a creator, I've always had that tight grip to my creation when I release it. And so this was the first time that I could release something knowing that it was completely out of my hands how anybody was going to hear these words and if it was going to even make sense.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. The manual feminine. Yeah. So, and that's I think that's one of the things of walking a heart led life is that if you're going to teach it, you got to walk it. Otherwise, it just doesn't correlate to the heart because the heart is genuine and it's there's an authentic vibration to it. And if you're not walking that, it's not going to feel fulfilling for the self. So interesting that you wrote a manual about how to live and that you then had to step into living it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And, as someone who stepped in, it's not easy, but I really do believe that everything is equal parts easy, hard. You just have to find that perspective that it's just in there is another lens, there is another lens, there is another lens, and if you learn how to keep flipping your lens over, you'll realize every experience is easy hard. Like staying asleep, same levels as easy hard as this. It's just in a different way. Being conscious to the fact that you are creating your life experience is an incredibly daunting thing to know, and you can't unknow it. So you don't have the luxury of being able to hide behind excuses or anything. Like all of those beautiful luxuries go. You can't have the luxury of somebody having an argument with you and you just blaming them as being an asshole. You're like, "Ugh, there's something in here for me." Like, you're s the responsibility of knowing that you're co-creating everything means that you can't sort of float through anymore. So that's the hard part is the accountability. However, the more you lean into that, the more you understand, well, it's not full responsibility. This is shared. And also there's parts of me that I don't have to change everything about me. So you start to actually lean in and play with that idea a lot more rather than just be bamboozled by it and try and make everything perfect. I feel like that's a huge slipstream that a lot of people in the awakening process go in, which is to try and perfect it, try and use awareness to perfect themselves and perfect the human experience. I don't know that anyone can sidestep that part of awakening, but hopefully it's short lived and you arrive at the what the fuck, like whatever.
Yeah.
It's happening and there's no way I'm gonna arrive at that perfect space while I'm alive consistently. Otherwise, that's an illusion.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's always this fractal nature of life that is here's what you're comfortable with now, here's what's possible,
Mhm.
and then are you going to step in? If you do step in, it's going to be challenging, but the benefit is that there's a reward. If you don't step in, you're not going to get the reward. And so that easy, hard part that you're talking about for me is like, okay, yes, it can be so hard, but I think for certain people, it's easier and more beneficial for them in this lifetime to stay where they are. Like that's what they're here for. That's their nature. That's a satisfying life. Whereas for other people, it's like, no, actually, the especially when you do a lot of personal work, I think what happens is your capacity expands to hold what is happening in your life, and therefore the vision of what's possible feels more accessible. So there's always the like just going just beyond the boundary. And then it's like, well, if I had tried this 5 years ago, I would be literally in the fetal position. But now, because I'm so used to being uncomfortable and being with the unknown and stepping into the unknown, that it's like, this just feels normal. I don't know what's happening. I don't know where I'm going, but I trust the divine and I trust life and I trust the calling of my heart. Ah, okay. Actually, all these things that I thought were going to be hard, they're not hard anymore. And it's such an amazing point to get to that in life where the realization is this stuff used to be hard. Now it's not hard.
Yeah. Yeah, everything you said, yes, it's so well articulated is you have to cross unfortunately, you have to cross the threshold to know it was all worth it, and you can have someone like me cheering you on the sideline saying, "Go, trust me, it's worth it," but it's you unless you cross through, you'll never believe it, like, the the person that's still on the other side, you're like, "That I can never do that." Can't possibly grasp the feeling of this, everything I'm feeling now, everything I'm going through was so worth it because you have to get to it. Retrospect is a gift for a reason. You have to be there on that side to be able to access the wisdom that it comes with. This idea of knowing better, you've got to be in a different position to know better. So I really resonate with everything you said, and it's all worth it. But to keep doing that, it's like your life is a it's like a wardrobe, and if you pick one outfit to wear your whole life, okay, as long as you love it so much that you don't wanna change, okay.
Mm.
But if you hate it, and if it's starting to get tight and you're growing too big and it's digging into your stomach but you keep putting it on, it's like, there's a whole new wardrobe in here, like try something else. And the first time that you take those clothes off and put something else on is excruciating because it feels like it's your skin. However, when you do it over and over again, which I have, and it's not fun, but for the purpose of perspective, it was so rewarding to know that this isn't my skin. This isn't me. It's just an identity. It's just a personality. It's just a, an outfit, and I can change it. And then the more that you align with that, the more it can become fun. Like, "Oh, let me see what it would feel like to dress up as this. Or let me feel what it would be like to dress up as this." And to know that, I mean, for someone like me who has felt the expiry date of each outfit, as I reach for a new one, there is that feeling of like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to take this off." But the like you said, the more you do it, you realize it's actually not as hard as I'm remembering. I'm better at this now. So let me try this one on. Let me see what it does. And that for me is the answer to, the whole idea of ego death and overcoming the ego and everything. Again, I feel like if you want to participate, like if you want to spend your life sort of mastering that and sitting on a hill, and that's possible, but if you are here to participate and to co-create and to connect with other humans and design something, to do that without your ego, I mean, I'm not going to say it's not possible, but I'd like to see it because you need that element. That's the piece that helps you connect, that helps you, maneuver. So it's not about ego death. I feel like it's about respecting the ego, respecting what it does, what it allows, and not taking it seriously, not taking it like as if it is you, and that when you need to change or adapt or grow it or put certain bits away, it's not like you're killing yourself. It's just, oh, that doesn't need to evolve with me. That can go. Um, yeah.
Mhm. Beautiful, beautiful. And what's the kind of work you do now?
Well, I'm opening up to I've looked at all my skills that I've accumulated my whole life and realizing I have so much to offer that again, it's not really templated.
Okay.
I've created something in me and of me that's not templated. So I worked very closely with you and your beautiful academy Pia to help me process the overwhelm that came with this doesn't fit, Ash. What do I do? How do I go from English teacher to designer to a spiritual book writer to what do I do next? And then, it was this fun process of, I guess, collaging and montaging and saying, well, I'm starting a new brand and it's called Manal Waugh. And it's based on that essence, which is that little girl, the dreamer who knew that a woman does not fit in her full shape and size under the current templates that have been offered to her in any space in this world. And whether you want to look at, a girl from um, a marginalized society or a highly patriarchal world, or a woman, in the modern world, from a very affluent, it's the same kind of template. It's just wrapped up differently. So if my allegiance is to creating a new template for women, particularly for myself, um, that can happen in all of my facets. So offering still my services for fashion, but creating a more custom experience versus, just wedding dresses and doing collections. So there's an avenue to work with me to create pieces or recreate your wardrobe or recreate your relationship with your wardrobe. Because one of the most important relationships a woman can have to start dismantling templates is the relationship with herself and her version of beautiful, her version of expression of that. So I want to stay in that world, but it's no longer Bowie Ray. It's Manal Waugh. And then there's the Lucid Dreams offering, because I do believe that I speak a very unique language when it comes to life. I can hear it as a lucid dream, and I can hear the layers, and I can hear where people are lost. They're trying to translate, they're trying to move through dream states, they're trying to shift their thinking and their being and their feeling. So I'm offering courses and workshops and coaching and exciting new ways to connect the dots with people, not for them, but with them, because I've definitely understood that how I hear is just one piece of the musical symphony. And so when you have everybody that can hear a different instrument, we're all talking together, it just becomes like this real buzz of like, oh, that's what's happening. So it's not me just offering, I know what's happening. It's just I can hear everything. So offering those courses just helps create a really strong space where we can crack through some templates that haven't been cracked through before and just open up possibilities and open up um, to me, it's opening up futures that don't look like the past. That's what I'm most excited about, particularly right now when it doesn't look like it's possible. Everybody feels like they know what's about to happen, with AI and the current situation of the world. I like to just remind us all that it's still the present moment and we have a huge, huge role of what happens next. Um, so really pushing ourselves into action, into reaction, where do we want to react from and what do we want to create from? And it's not over.
Mm. Yeah, and something that comes through from you very strongly is your sense of alignment. Like that's something I encounter with you time and time and time and time again. Is like, okay, is this an alignment? And yeah, I can see people working with you and really benefiting from that sense that you have around, how are you resonating? Is this actually what you want? Because I'm sensing that there's the story from the past or this template that's playing out. So beautiful. So, well, thank you for coming on Beyond Turning Points and having conversation and sharing your wisdom and your experience. Um, I think I'm going to open up your book. Let's see. Let's see what
Yeah.
what comes
Lantern.
here. Hmm, I'm just going to read it. We'll see. The truth is the pain that fear cannot face. So we know now we have nestled into a life of lies and demons, rife with shame, guilt, and deep wounded self love. We hear these words and say, yes, yes, this is true. But what next? Love thyself and all will heal? Well, yes, but there is a simpler way first. I'll leave it there because hopefully the listeners will get your book to find out what it is. So thank you, Nani, and I'll see you again soon.
Yeah, and thank you for this conversation. You put so many pieces together.
No,
Me still.
thank you.
Welcome.
Always an honor and a joy. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.